Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's Rabbi Stephen here. Hope you're doing well. Hope you've had a great week. Again, I'm going to send this out on Wednesday, so I hope you have a great Thanksgiving and happy Rosh Chodesh. Sunday is the beginning of the month of Kislev, and 25 days into Kislev, the 25th of Kislev. We all know what that is. What is it? Right, Hanukkah. Very good, very good. So, I apologize for not giving you a little bit of advance warning on my last Devar Torah. From now on, I'm going to make a point of being more up on the new months, because the new month is sort of a mini holiday. It's like a mini New Year. Rosh Hashanah during the month of Tishrei, we make a big celebration in a way for Rosh Hashanah, and then of course Yom Kippur is a very stringent day when we afflict ourselves, as the Torah says, and we deny ourselves pleasure and distraction. Really, that's the whole point, because we really want to focus on being better people and connecting with Hashem and acknowledging our sins, what we think we've sinned and what we might have sinned but we don't realize it. So the hidden sins, as it were. So each month is a renewal of sort. The other 11 months or 12 months, as I think the case might be next year, because this year Passover a little early. So I think that the following year is going to be a leap year. We'll find out. But each of the 11 or 12 months are kind of a mini renewal, when we're, again, kind of refocusing and reestablishing and rededicating ourselves to the laws and, the commandments and, of course, the heritage and the culture and the morality of it. So, all right, so this week's portion is Vayeishev, and he went out. So, in the previous portion, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, Jacob is escaping. Esau, his brother, is very angry that he took his birthright and his blessings. So Rivka, his mother, sends him out, says, go find yourself a wife, go establish a family, basically was the hidden message. Vayeishev, he went out, so off he goes. And where does he go? He goes back to Haran, to Lavan, to his clan, to find a wife. So he gets to a well, which is a typical scenario for the men of our Torah to meet their wives. Yitzchak, right? Eliezer met Rivka at the well. Yaakov is going to meet Rachel at the well. And later on, Moshe Rabbeinu will meet Zipporah at the well. So it's a very, sure, it provides water, but water also has a spiritual connotation as well, mayim. In fact, what's the word for heaven? Shamayim. What's the word for water? Mayim. And some of you may understand the Hebrew letter mem. Kind of looks like a mound with a little stick on it. Used to look like a wavy line, like the M that we use, and it basically meant nourishment. So in ancient Hebrew, when it was all pictograms, the aleph looked like a bull's head, which meant power or strength, and in fact the word elef means power. Aluf is a general, and alafim means myriads of thousands. So if you put the aleph, which means strength and power, along with nourishment, what is the strength that gives nourishment? Aim, the mother. Okay, so there it is. So he meets Rachel, falls in love with her at the well, and goes to, here's Laban again. Now he's the father of Rachel and Leah. And he asks for her hand in marriage, and he says, yeah, and Laban, their father, says, yes, but you must work for me for 7 years in order to pay, like a dowry, pay up for Rachel. So 7 years goes by, and for some of us, 7 years would be waiting and waiting. For Jacob, he was so in love with Rachel that it went like that. So here's 7 years, and the wedding's set up, and his bride comes out, and she's all veiled, and they go through the ceremony, and he unveils the woman, and lo and behold, it's Leah, her older daughter. He looks at Laban and says, why have you deceived me? The arrangement was for me to marry Rachel. And Laban says, yes, but surely you know that in our culture that we don't marry off the younger daughter before we marry off the older daughter, the older sister. So here's Rachel. But go through your 1 week of wedding, of your honeymoon, come back and you can marry Rachel, and you work for me for another 7 years. So they did that. He went through his week with Leah. which on the surface may not have been real fair for Leah because she felt unloved. She was like the consolation prize. She got married because she had to. She had to get married so that before Jacob could marry his one true love, Rachel. And of course, Laban wanted him around because, as we see from the chapter, Yaakov working for Lavan, all his cattle. I mean, the guy got rich. Yaakov was like this big mazel. He was this good fortune for him. He went out and he took care of his cattle, took care of his sheep, and they all multiplied, and Laban became wealthy, as did kind of Yaakov later on, as we'll see. So Leah had poor eyesight. Now let's talk about this for a minute, because initially Jacob didn't think there was any problem marrying Rachel, because they say that the patriarchs just kind of instinctively knew Torah, and what commandment do we hear down the road? That a man doesn't marry two sisters lest they be rivals, lest there be a contention between them, vying for their husband's attention. So the sages look at this in another way and say, well, he was supposed to marry Rachel because he was the younger of the sons chronologically, and Esau was initially supposed to marry Leah. Okay, this is the Orthodox version, right? So Jacob goes and he accepts the challenge, and he marries Leah and he marries Rachel, and they each have their two maids, Zilpah and Bilhah, and ultimately between the four of them they give birth to 13 offspring, the 12 sons, and of course there was Dinah, the daughter. Some people think that each son had a twin sister. Okay, that's been raised as well. And later on, when Jacob wants to leave Laban says, well, I don't want you to leave, but you can take certain sheep. You can take sheep that are or Jacob comes to him and says, I've helped you grow rich. Okay, I've worked for you for 20 years. I want something to take with me. So Lavan says, well, you can have the spotted or the speckled sheep, which typically don't happen. Jacob sets up this rod. The sheep look at the rod. They give birth to a lot of the speckled and the freckled and the spotted sheep, and he goes off with a lot of the animals. So Jacob is deceived by Lavan on a lot of different cases. He changes their arrangement. This is a reference in the Torah, in the verbiage, in the verses. And people say, well, Jacob deceived Yitzchak to get the birthright, so now it's just coming back at him. In the Chabad Chumash, there is no mention of deception, but rather Yaakov, they say, at first was distressed in giving the birthright to Jacob because he was supposed to give it to Esau. But once he found out that he had sold his birthright, he's like, oh, okay, then I gave it to my firstborn, who was Yaakov. All right. They also really don't go from that at all. They say that the reason Jacob did that was to make up for the sin of Adam giving in to the serpent, eating the apple. So now it's turned around. But the conservative see it as a deception. They say that, Rivka took advantage of Yitzchak's poor eyesight, and because she knew instinctively that Yaakov really was the true son who was going to continue the culture and the heritage of what would become Judaism. So let's look at this, because personally, in the Chabad, they always say, what's bothering Rashi? Well, this is what's bothering Rabbi Stephen or Rabbi Shmuel. This is what's bothering me. If Jacob was always meant to have that birthright, and he had to go through this subterfuge to get it, why then does he have to suffer the consequences, the karma, if you will, or the negative implications of the fact that he deceived his father? So now he's getting deceived by his father-in-law time after time over the 20 years. All right. So after a lot of thought, because I've always struggled with this, I've always had a hard time reconciling this, but let's turn it around, because, for me, I always believe that the best path is a straightforward path in the Torah. We're a Torah of truth, but, we don't tell the truth, one exception, when it's going to hurt somebody's feelings. So what should Jacob and Rivka have done? Because I know in my marriage, my wife would come to me and she'd say, look, here's the situation. Why didn't Rivka, and I know some of you will say, well, back then the wife didn't confront the husband, but they had a pretty good relationship. Rivka as a matriarch, was considered a prophetess, as were the others, Sarah, Rachel, and Leah, okay? So she was a prophetess. So why did she go to Yitzchak and say, this really is the son that needs the birthright, and I think you know that. And by the way, Yaakov bought his birthright from Esau. So there you go. Esau had so little consideration for his birthright, for the heritage that you and your father Avraham are starting, and that we need to continue, that he was willing to sell his birthright to Yaakov for a pot of lentils. Do you really want him to have the birthright, plus the fact you're absolved because he sold it? Weren't they just really upfront with that? And maybe Yaakov would have said, yeah. And when Esau came, he was, hey, too bad. You sold it. You knew what you were doing. You're an adult. Okay? But I do have some blessings for you, so don't worry. Isn't this what would have been the right thing to do? I say yes. But here's the thing. Okay, let's look at our patriarchs and matriarchs. Folks, this was new ground. This was only the second generation of Torah, and Torah wasn't even written down. It was still conceptual. It was still instinctive, right? So these people were kind of feeling their way. Yeah, maybe Yaakov had to bear some consequences, or maybe he just had to go through it in order to make a point, okay? Anyway, I'm a little bit over. Hope you enjoyed this particular Devar Torah. I like to think I gave you some things to think about, not just what happened in the Torah, but maybe our own morality, that, honesty is the best policy, okay? So have a great week. Have a great Thanksgiving. Happy Rosh Chodesh. And we will see you. Remember, no services this weekend, but we will see you the 30th, the last week, or I guess it's the first weekend of December. Please try and show up Saturday. We've got a special Shabbat. We have a woman that wants to do a yahrzeit for her mother, and we look forward to seeing you. Shabbat Shalom.